Welcome back to Investing Talk Podcast.
Yeah.
Today, we're going to be looking at Zeta Global Holdings,
Right.
ticker symbol ZETA. It's a company in the marketing technology space. And they help businesses refine their advertising by using a wealth of data.
I see.
So essentially, they gather tons of information about consumer behavior,
Right.
and then use that to help companies target their ads more effectively.
Yeah.
But here's the thing, ZDTA stock has been on a bit of a downswing
Oh.
lately, even though the company's projecting, some pretty significant growth. So we're going to kind of explore those contrasting signals and see if maybe this might be a hidden gem
Okay.
for your portfolio.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. So first, let's just dig into Zeta's recent performance and their projections.
Sure.
They're forecasting a revenue increase of 39 to 41% for the fourth quarter of 2024. And for the whole year, they're anticipating growth between 35 and 36%.
Wow.
Those are some pretty impressive numbers, wouldn't you say?
They really are. If they reach those projections, that suggests a very strong demand for Zeta services. Businesses are clearly seeing value in what they offer. But what I think is really interesting is that they collect somewhere between 3,000 and 5,000 data points.
Wow.
On 240 million U.S. adults.
That's a staggering amount of data.
It is.
It makes you wonder, how does that translate into a benefit for their clients?
Well, think about it this way. The more data a company has, the more precisely they can target their advertising.
Right.
Instead of just sending generic ads out into the void, they can tailor their message to reach people who are actually likely to be interested in their product. This leads to much higher conversion rates and lower customer acquisition costs. It's all about efficiency and maximizing return on investment.
Okay, that makes sense. But, so then here's the puzzle. If Zeta is doing so well and they're poised for such strong growth, why has their stock price dropped about 20% recently?
Well, I think investors might be taking a wait-and-see approach ahead of the company's fourth quarter and full-year earnings announcement, which is scheduled for February 26th. They want to see if Zeta actually delivers on those ambitious projections.
It's a wait-and-see situation, and it's worth noting that Zeta is also unveiling their new long-term strategic plan called Zeta 2028 on that same day.
Interesting.
Could that be adding to the uncertainty?
Perhaps. Investors are likely wondering what changes this new plan might bring. Is it a sign of continued growth and expansion, or are there shifts in strategy that could impact the company's future performance?
Right. Okay. Let's shift gears for a moment and look at some of the technical indicators surrounding ZETA.
Okay.
The stock is currently priced at $20.96, and over the past year, it's ranged from a low of $9.35 to a high of $38.20. The 50-day simple moving average stands at $19.80, while the 200-day simple moving average is slightly higher at $21.53. The 14-day RSI is at 3650, and the recent trading volume has been around 2,658,388 shares. What do you make of all those numbers?
Well, those technical indicators are painting a bit of a mixed picture. You know, the stock price hovering near its moving averages suggests some uncertainty in both the short and long term.
Okay. But what about that RSI dipping toward what's considered oversold territory?
Right.
Doesn't that suggest a potential buying opportunity?
It could. The RSI, or Relative Strength Index, is a momentum indicator that measures the speed and magnitude of recent price changes.
Right.
An RSI below 30 is often considered oversold, which can signal that the stock is potentially undervalued.
Right.
But it's just one piece of the puzzle. We need to consider all the factors at play.
Speaking of potentially undervalued, the average one-year price target for ZETA is $35.43, which is considerably higher than its current price. Does that suggest potential for the stock to rebound?
It's certainly a point in favor of ZETA.
Right.
But remember, price targets are just estimates and shouldn't be taken as guarantees. It's important to look at the reasoning behind those targets and assess whether it aligns with your own analysis of the company.
Now, here's an intriguing factor to consider. Political ad spending surged dramatically in Q3 of 2024, growing by 5.4 times compared to the previous year.
Wow.
Do you think Zeta benefited from this trend, given its data-driven approach to advertising?
It's definitely possible, but it's also important to remember that political ad spending tends to decline significantly after an election cycle.
Right.
The key question is, can Zeta maintain its growth momentum without that boost from political campaigns?
So it seems like there are a lot of moving parts to consider with Zeta Global Holdings. They have strong growth potential, but there are also some uncertainties that investors need to be aware of.
Exactly. We need to see how their upcoming earnings announcement and strategic plan address those uncertainties.
Okay.
Yeah.
Welcome back to Investing Talk Podcast. We're talking all things Zeta Global Holdings. Before we left off, we were discussing their impressive growth projections
Right.
and the recent dip in their stock price, and of course the looming earnings announcement.
And let's not forget about Zeta 2028, their new long-term strategic plan.
Right.
This plan could offer valuable insights into how Zeta intends to navigate potential challenges and position itself for sustainable growth in the long run.
So if we were to put on our investor hats for a second,
Mm-hmm.
what specific details should we be listening for during that earnings call and strategic plan presentation? What are the key data points or announcements that would make us lean towards buying, holding, or even selling ZETA?
Well, the most obvious thing is whether Zeta hits those revenue targets
Right.
they've set for Q4 and the full year. If they fall short, it could signal that their growth is slowing down, which would be a red flag for investors.
Meeting those projections is definitely to be crucial for maintaining investor confidence.
Absolutely. But beyond just the raw numbers, we also need to pay close attention to their guidance for 2025.
Okay.
Are they projecting continued strong growth, or are they starting to scale back their expectations?
Right, because those forward-looking statements will give us a sense of how Zeta sees the market evolving and where they fit into the picture.
Exactly. And in terms of Zeta 2028, I'd be particularly interested in hearing how they plan to diversify their revenue streams and lessen their reliance on political ad spending. Are they exploring new markets? Are they developing new products or services? The details of this plan will be very telling.
It's like we're piecing together a puzzle. Each new bit of information helps us see the bigger picture more clearly.
Precisely. And beyond just the financial and strategic aspects, we also need to keep an eye on the competitive landscape. The marketing technology sector is constantly evolving with new players emerging all the time. How is Zeta planning to stay ahead of the curve and maintain its competitive edge?
So it's not just about internal growth. It's about staying relevant and innovative in a rapidly changing market.
Exactly. And that's where their investments in research and development and strategic partnerships become crucial. Are they actively looking for ways to adapt and evolve, or are they content with the status quo?
All right, let's switch gears for a moment and talk about that political ad spending surge we touched on earlier. It was quite a dramatic increase, and it makes you wonder how much Zeta might have benefited from it.
It's certainly a factor worth considering. However, we need to be realistic about the potential impact of the upcoming decline in political ad spending.
Right.
How reliant is Zeta on this revenue stream? What steps are they taking to mitigate this potential loss? These are questions investors need answers to.
So it boils down to risk assessment. How much risk are investors willing to take on a company that could be affected by a drop in political ad spending?
Right. And that's where the Zeta 2028 plan becomes even more important. If they can demonstrate a clear strategy for diversifying their revenue and reducing their reliance on political advertising, it could ease investor concerns.
But even with a solid plan, some investors might still be hesitant given the uncertainties surrounding Zeta.
Right.
What would you say to someone who's on the fence about investing in this company?
I'd say it's essential to consider your own investment goals and risk tolerance.
Okay.
Zeta has the potential for significant growth, but there are also some risks involved.
It seems like we're reaching a point where we need more information before making a definitive call on ZETA.
I agree. The upcoming earnings announcement and the details of their Zeta 2028 plan will be critical in determining whether this stock is a buy, a hold, or a sell.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground today,
We have.
from Zeta's impressive growth projections to the uncertainties surrounding their future. Let's wrap up this discussion with some final thoughts and key takeaways for our listeners. Welcome back to Investing Talk Podcast. We've been looking at Zeta Global Holdings, ticker symbol ZEPA, a company making waves in the marketing technology sector.
Right. We've been discussing their impressive growth projections, the recent dip in their stock price, and the upcoming earnings announcement and their strategic plan, Zeta 2028. It's a complex picture with a lot of factors to consider.
It is. So for our listeners who are still trying to decide whether ZETA is a good investment, let's zoom out for a moment and look at the bigger picture. What are some of the broader trends that are shaping the marketing technology sector?
Well, one of the biggest trends is this growing emphasis on consumer privacy. People are becoming more and more aware of how their data is being collected and used. And there's increasing pressure on companies to be more transparent and responsible in their data practices.
And of course, we've seen a wave of new regulations aimed at protecting consumer data, like the General Data Protection Regulation in Europe and the California Consumer Privacy Act here in the U.S.
Exactly. So for a company like Zeta, which relies heavily on data navigating these evolving regulations and privacy concerns, is crucial.
It's not just about having access to a lot of data anymore. It's about using that data ethically and responsibly.
Absolutely. And it's about being able to adapt to these changing expectations and demonstrate to both consumers and investors that you are committed to data privacy.
So how does Zeta Global Holdings measure up in this regard? Have they addressed these privacy concerns effectively?
Well, they've certainly made some efforts. They've implemented privacy-enhancing technologies and adopted industry best practices for data security and transparency. However, it's an ongoing challenge for any company in this space, and investors need to assess whether Zeta's approach is robust enough to mitigate potential risks.
Right, because any missteps in data privacy could damage their reputation and lead to regulatory fines or even legal challenges.
Exactly. So it's something investors need to monitor closely.
Now let's circle back to Zeta's upcoming earnings announcement and strategic plan. What specific details would you be looking for to kind of gauge their future prospects?
From an investor's perspective, I would want to see evidence that Zeta is addressing the challenges and opportunities presented by these broader industry trends. For example, how are they adapting their data collection and usage practices in light of the evolving privacy regulations? Are they investing in privacy-enhancing technologies? Are they communicating their data privacy policies clearly and transparently to both consumers and investors?
And in terms of their strategic plan, Zeta 2028, what are some key things to watch for?
Well, I'd be looking for signs that they are diversifying their revenue streams beyond political advertising. Are they expanding into new markets or developing new products and services that cater to evolving consumer needs and preferences? And how are they positioning themselves to compete in an increasingly crowded and dynamic market?
It sounds like there's a lot riding on these upcoming announcements.
There certainly is. The earnings report and the strategic plan will provide valuable insights into Zeta's ability to navigate these challenges and capitalize on emerging opportunities.
So let's bring this all together for our listeners. What's the bottom line on Zeta Global Holdings? Is it a buy, a hold, or a sell?
Well, as we've discussed, there's no easy answer. Zeta has some compelling growth potential, but there are also some significant uncertainties. The hold recommendation makes sense given the current information.
But what would make you more inclined to give it a buy rating?
I'd want to see strong evidence that they're meeting or exceeding their revenue projections, that they're effectively addressing those data privacy concerns, and that their strategic plan demonstrates a clear vision for long-term sustainable growth.
So it's a wait-and-see situation. Investors need to carefully weigh the potential rewards against the risks and make a decision that aligns with their own investment goals and risk tolerance. Thanks for joining us on Investing Talk podcast for this in-depth look at Zeta Global Holdings. We hope this discussion has provided you with some valuable insights to inform your investment decisions. Don't forget to subscribe, share, and leave a comment. We'll see you next time for another insightful discussion about the world of investing.